Coogs House. All right. Yes, last weekend was rough, but it's time to flush it. We got one we can win this weekend.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast all about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, and whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to step by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Appreciate you making us first listen each and every day here at Locked On Cougs. We'll join the conversation, but you don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below if you think a straw has one hole or two or some other number. Again, there's a right answer, wrong answer. I'm not getting all that today, but tell us in the comments down below if you don't know what to say. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Best place to get last minute, the lowest prices guaranteed, but more on that fun later because Houston's wearing blue this weekend, and we will talk about that as they host the Baylor Bears for the final home game of the 2024 season. Willie Fritz's first season at the helm. We'll talk about the blue uniforms and stuff like that. We'll also talk about the advantages I think they can take advantage of. I think that makes sense. Advantages I think they can take advantage of in this one. But first and foremost, this is a different Baylor team than we played a year ago, and I wanted to look into what makes them so different and kind of get a better idea of frankly where they found success and what sticks out to me. So Baylor is officially 6-4 and technically 4-3 in conference. I would contest that and say I kind of want to make it 4-4 in conference because Baylor did lose to Utah in what was technically a non-conference game at the start of the season. It was previously scheduled from before Utah joined the Big 12, and so it was just left on and did not count towards either conference record. But I digress. They lost, 5 of their first 7 football games this season. 4 of their first 6 football games this season. Math is hard. And honestly, they found something that worked as they got ready in the bye week before Texas Tech. And ever since then have not looked back, won 4 games in a row since then. Obviously, they came out of the bye week, put up 59 on Tech, kind of jumpstart that process. And frankly, this is a big deal for that program as it, kind of saved Dave Aranda's job. It looks like this time a year ago, I think we all kind of assumed Dave Aranda was going to get fired as he was heading towards a 3-9 finish. He did not, and it was one of the more surprising hires in all of college football, let alone the Big 12. And then again, he's in charge of this program, and they're sitting here at 6-4 as they're rebuilding a mess that he broke down. They kind of still hold on to that 12-2 season 2021 as his big deal. We'll see how long that lasts after they go 6 and whatever this year. Their offense is led by kind of a two-headed monster, to say the least. The quarterback, Sawyer Robertson, gets a lot of the praise, as most quarterbacks do. He's come on a lot in this win streak for sure. 5 touchdowns in the Tech game. He's got 20 touchdowns and just 4 picks on the year. He's a conservative passer of the football, but he does a pretty good job of finding, I don't want to call it check down, but shorter routes and concepts and being safe with the football. We'll talk more about the specifics of that as the week goes on. Yeah, the big game at Tech that I mentioned, but he also had a lot of yards against BYU and Colorado. He likes his target, Josh Cameron. Josh Cameron's a big, strong receiver. Cameron's got 525 receiving yards. Ashton Hawkins, I guess, would be the next closest. He's at about 100 yards less on the season. He's more of your 5'9" scatty type of wideout. And so that's kind of their dual threat here at the 2 spots. And frankly, the targets he goes to by far and away the most. And Josh Cameron, again, a little bit more than Ashton at that. The other guy that you got to keep an eye on, obviously, is their running back. Now, Bryson Washington has 700 or 699 yards in the season. He's going to break 700, I'd imagine, against Houston this weekend. He's got 10 touchdowns on the year already. A really, really good runner of the football. This is the kind of back that has given Houston problems in the past. And I would say that, well, I would say that as I look across this, I worry about how Houston's going to handle him um, over the course of a full football game, right? Um, Now, that does put together a pretty formidable offense. I still think I'd take Houston's defense more times than not. I know that they got lit up against Kansas, and then didn't look. They looked better against Arizona than did against Kansas coming out of the bye weeks. But obviously, coming out of bye weeks has been troublesome for the defense. As I look at this, though, I think the big deal here for Houston's going to be keeping an eye on that Baylor defense. They still kind of alternate back and forth between a 3 and a 4-man front. In my notes, I have it down to a 3.5-man front. I can't quite. It seems more of a personnel thing to me than a situational thing to me. That is, when certain guys are in the game, they're going to be in a 4. Certain guys are in the game, they're going to be in a 3. And I don't think it's not like 3rd and long, they're always in a 3, or 4th and short, they're always in a 4, or whatever. It seems more just based on who they're putting in the game at that moment. Now, I would imagine that you do see more like 3rd and really long and 3-mans or whatever, which maybe Houston running the ball on 3rd and long will actually finally work there. Mostly a joke. They have 2 linebackers on the field always, so it's always a 4-2 or a 3-2 because those guys that are at the edge, if they're not online scrimmage, kind of way out in the flat area, hook, curl, flat zone kind of guys. Weak spot to me, as far as the passing game go, are the field safety. I think the kid's name is Devin Bobby. He's definitely a run-first safety kind of player, and they frequently put him on the field side of things. That's the kind of guy you can take advantage of with double moves. He's over-aggressive. Use it against him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He does fill the run really hard, and so I don't want to act like they don't have to take some like precautions to be ready for that. But on the whole, I would not say that Houston's got too crazy much to worry about with this one. He feels run hard, but I Houston's not necessarily had success running out on the safety area outside anyway, so I would imagine they stay clear of that. I think that they can also maybe help off of Trev Mave and block Jackie Marshall and the pass rush kind of stuff. While Trev Mave is more of a run defender, he's really not a good pass rush kind of guy. Jackie Marshall, big time defensive end, good pass rusher. The kind of guy that worries me in this one. We'll get to the advantages in a second. But the kind of guy that worries me in this one because of the way he plays the edge. We talked last week. We talked throughout the year. The Houston's had trouble with edge pressure. Jackie Marshall kind of creates that on his own. He does seem to be playing a lot of strong side and field side as well for them. So I think you can kind of scheme your way away from Devin Bobby and Jackie Marshall as you're running the football. So if you get put on a hash, if you'll like run into the boundary, and while it seems like a counterintuitive kind of thing, I do think you'll have some success getting away from their better defenders. You also see colleges typically hide a slower defender in the boundary because it's less space to cover if you get stuck in coverage. Houston can really take advantage of those kinds of things by getting to the 2nd and 3rd levels. Guys like Rashawn Stanford on that backside. I still imagine Houston has more success running between the guards than they do outside of them. Just a function of our strengths and their weaknesses. But I think that's the game there. And if you can scheme them into an odd front, there are big bubbles in the B gap to be turned. Frankly, Houston took advantage of that a year ago. And I think that Houston continue to build into those kinds of things. I want to talk some about specific advantages before I get too far ahead of myself. But before we get to any of that, I want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by Roy. Return on you, because you need to listen up. This is how you can get involved in changing the landscape of Houston athletics. You've already downloaded the Roy app, right? If you're listening to me every week, you don't know you downloaded the Roy app. But you've heard us talk about the season now changing the NIL industry. But now Roy allows you, the fan, to get a say in who gets the NIL money. Here's what I love. You get to pick the player, and you get your money back if that player transfers out. So Roy is helping us keep our team intact and actually good for the game long term. Now, last weekend, I gave my Roy player of the game to Boogie Johnson. He had 4 catches. I thought he should have had 5. I played really well, was open more times than just those 5. So that means he gets $100 in his Roy account from Locked On Cougs. Now you can show your support for Boogie or whomever. AJ Halsey's a great pick. Keith Cooper. Maybe cheer up Xeon Chris a little bit, whatever the case may be. Just go to download the Roy app. You can see what the logo looks like if you're watching on YouTube, or join Roy. Go to joinroy.com. Now let's spotlight the Roy Play of the Week. That is dun, 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 as I said, Boogie Johnson. Every contribution counts. We gave him $100, 10, 20, 15. It all has to be the same for your favorite players, and make sure that they stay put. Join me in showing Boogie or whomever else some love on the Roy app. They have men's basketball and women's basketball as well. You can download the Roy app. Go to joinroy.com today. Use code LOCKED on. Every time athlete from every team, men's basketball, women's basketball, and Houston Cougar football are all there. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Go to joinroy.com for full terms. Roy, sports players, change the game. We also, that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time, the best place to get last-minute tickets at the lowest prices, guaranteed. Last I saw, they had tickets to the Baylor game this weekend, all-in pricing. Yes, it means all-in, no surprises. All-in pricing was down to in the upper $40. That is incredible to get into the lower bowl for a blue out special edition. I believe it's a blue towel for showing up early. All kinds of fun stuff on campus for the game this weekend. You get all-in pricing, like I mentioned. You also got a lowest price guarantee. Game Time will credit you 110% back of the difference if you can find a ticket to the same section and row for less somewhere else. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Down the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Parker Ainsworth, Locked On Cougs here, looking at Houston and Baylor matching up this weekend. And I've got to say that I'm excited about this one. Houston enters the game with 4 wins and 2 weeks to play, so they win both, and they are bowl eligible officially. Lots on the line this week as Houston takes on Baylor. This will be the third segment talking about the idea of the blue uniforms and stuff like that. But man, oh man, this one's a fun one. I think as I look across Baylor's schedule, I saw 2 games that stuck out as ways to look at for Houston to take advantage of. The first team I always look for has a team played BYU or UCF. Baylor has played and lost to BYU at home. And so BYU is also a defensive-led team that tries to run the ball and control the clock. They probably have like a little bit more consistency in terms of passing and throwing and catching. But on the whole, I think they're a very comparable team. That's frankly how I started predicting the Kansas State upset, right? Is that I was like, okay, well, Kansas State had a lot of trouble with BYU, and while BYU might be further along their rebuild than Houston is, I kind of feel like they're similar in a lot of ways, right? Now, in that game, BYU at Baylor, BYU was able to jump out early, play action run game, take advantage of those safeties that want to fill up on run really hard, find holes in the zone behind them. Admittedly, part of the lead was built on things like a forced turnover, and a turnover on downs and stuff like that. Retzloff, the quarterback, Jake Retzloff, the quarterback BYU, was also an effective runner in this game. 6 rushes for 53 yards and a touchdown. Kind of used a bunch of different tools to get up early, and then you could run, and kind of slow this thing down a little bit. Baylor did claw back into it. It ended up being, I think, 34-28. But on the whole, that big lead they took early, play action, taking advantage of Baylor playing the run, going over the top, something Houston can absolutely replicate. It doesn't have to be the tricky double reverse kind of play like we saw Houston try to run against Arizona. It can be simple, play action read kind of stuff. But the receivers Houston has, plus the space they're going to have, plus the opponent they're facing, plus the way the scouting report is going to run. I feel like Houston's got an advantage in taking over the top with that. Boogie Johnson, I mentioned in the read earlier, had a great week last week. I don't think there's any reason you couldn't see the same kind of production of he, Muse, Manjax, insert whichever receiver they decide not to cover over in Waco. So I check that one out. Now, Baylor and Utah was technically a non-conference game, but I looked at this one because I think the defense of Utah kind of lines up similarly to how Houston does. And Utah's defense, for what it's worth, got after them. Got really got after Baylor. Utah then also complemented that with 170 yards on the ground. Mekhi Bernard had 118 yards on 19 carries. He ran a lot of stuff that started off between the tackles and then would fall out. So, like, you hit the B gap, then as you get to linebacker level, you kind of ease your ways over to hash and then numbers and then sideline. Mekhi Bernard had a great day doing those kinds of things against this Baylor defensive front. Obviously, Mekhi Bernard is an upperclassman, veteran, etc. And Houston plays a plethora of young running backs. Rashawn Sanford, DJ Butler now. You've seen Jamarian Burnett. I'm assuming he gets back in the fold this week. All those guys are a lot younger. But I think that they can have some success as a unit because while Houston's working on some offensive line things at the edges, I do think that this kind of game where they can get up the middle against these guys fairly well. Now, Baylor's had several different large deficits this season, and ultimately, like, while they can claw back and make them close, has had trouble getting all the way back in those. Like, the biggest thing that happened for them against Tech was they never trailed in that game, right? That's a big deal. They're never really trailed in that game. So, as I look at one of the things Houston's kind of doing, looking at these similar teams, is you got to get up early, take advantage of the momentum early and then roll with the punches after that. Kind of they're going to try and claw back. They're going to try and get back in the game, etc. But you just got to trust your run game, trust your offensive game plan, and those kinds of things. And I know I say trust your offensive game plan, and I can see you rolling your eyes from here. For what it's worth, I think the 3.5 yards in a cloud of dust, once you've got a little bit of a lead in this game, if you can get that early, 3.5 yards in a cloud of dust will win you this game. It just will, right? You just got to have that lead early to establish it because Baylor will wear down in that running game. They've shown that this year. And frankly, you're playing at home. You got the momentum. Baylor's going to want to get back to Waco, etc. They're already bowl eligible. They're not playing with the same kind of allure that Houston's going to have to play with, I'd imagine. And then for what it's worth, also, Dave Aranda. Now, he's probably saved his job this year, but he's still also Dave Aranda. I feel pretty confident that Houston wins the coaching matchup there across the board. Now, coordinator versus coordinator, we can get a little more nitty-gritty over the course of the week, and I'll put that on my notes to make sure to talk maybe a little bit more scheme as the week goes on. We also got to talk to Cam Stewart later this week, host of Locked On Baylor, who, while we have differences of opinion of who runs Texas for whatever reasons, he is a pretty fun guy, so we'll talk to him this week, I'm sure. As we look ahead to the weekend, if looking at other advantages Houston has, I do think a major factor will be the home crowd. And I know that people have made fun of Houston's home crowd. That thing has been, that story is as old as I am, right? It's a little tired at this point. But between the Blue Out, the Towels, Senior Day, Willie Fritz's first year, frankly, hopefully better weather and all those different things, I think this could actually be a big time weekend for Houston. And I want to talk about how the blue uniforms play into all of that in the final segment. Before we get too far, I want to talk to you about a new buddy we got over at Mint Mobile, because I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through hot coals or walk on fire or anything like that just to save a few bucks. Look, it has to be easy. No hoops, no bogusness. So when Mint Mobile said it's easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I had to call them on it. Turns out it really is that easy to get wireless for just $15 a month. The longest part of the process was the time I spent on hold waiting to break up with my old provider. Now, I'm not going to tell you who they are. I don't mean to dismiss them too much, but it was pretty quick and easy to switch to Mint Mobile. To get started, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. Then you'll see that right now all 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with high-speed data, unlimited talk and text, delivered on the nation's fastest 5G network. You can use your phone with Mint Mobile on any plan. Just bring your number along with all your existing contacts. Find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile. Get 3 months of premium wireless service for just $15 a month. To get this new customer offer, you get three months of premium wireless plan for just $15. Go to mintmobile.com/locked-on-college. At mintmobile.com/locked-on-college. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month with mintmobile.com/wireless. Locked on college. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers, first pay 3-month plan only. Speeds above 40 gigabytes of data on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Parker Ainsworth, Locked On Cougs here. We're getting ready for Houston to flush Arizona from last weekend down the drain and move into the Baylor week officially. Now, Baylor's a turned-around football program. They've won 4 in a row. They're feeling pretty good about themselves. Sitting at 6-4, making it bowl eligible after a win over West Virginia. West Virginia, take me home, whatever the country road song is. And Houston, in preparing for this game, has alluded to for quite some time now, but made official a couple weeks ago, is going to be wearing their blue uniforms and is doing all kinds of things on social media. You've got the different blue icon, blue profile pictures and across all the social media platforms. I saw that the 2D player notes they handed out at the media press availability were also blue instead of red. All kinds of different stuff as Houston's pushing Houston blue this week. And I talked about at one point about merchandising and how blue is going to do a great deal for the merchandising, and anything you can do to sell yourself to the city of Houston is important. Blue does that. And before we get too far, I want to reiterate that blue does that. Houston blue is a part of Houston culture. It's not just the Oilers, and everyone wants to think about the Oilers because of their uniforms, but the Oilers wore blue because of Houston and not the other way around. If the Oilers were wearing oil colors, they'd be wearing blacks and browns and steels and whatever. They wore blue because Houston is a city that is represented by a blue flag with a white star in the middle with red writing around it, right? Blue, Houston blue, is a color tied to this city. It's on the old cop cars, signs across town, all kinds of places. The Oilers ran with that to make themselves, right? So not the other way around. This is tying Houston back to itself further. Obviously, in pop culture senses, ever since the Oilers left, right, there has been a desire. I hope you can hear the baby monitor there. There has been a desire to have blue in and around town more often. You see the Rockets had a light blue throwback a couple of weeks ago, right? There was uproar when the Titans wore the Houston Oilers throwbacks just last year, right? You got all kinds of different things with the University of Houston going on right now, and every program on campus wearing some version of Houston blue to tie it back to that and to expand the university within the city, right? Again, this is about the city, about gathering and capturing the city of Houston. Now, I know I've got fans, and University of Houston has alumni and fans that are not from Houston. And frankly, while I was born there, as someone who spent 33 years bouncing around the whole globe, it feels like I don't necessarily have the most time on task there either of anyone listening to this. I will say, though, that wherever you go, Houston Oilers blue sticks out as Houston, right? And so while Houston blue is maybe a slightly different delineation of that, the same thought remains. Light blue is a Houston thing, regardless of what football team you want to tie it to. And the Cougs are trying to make themselves that team that you tie it to. This is a once a year kind of thing and promotion. And Houston chose to do it with the Baylor game, a in-state rival, last home game of the season. And frankly, kind of a game you've always thought you could get because you won it last year, because Baylor's in an interestingly similar spot. And frankly, you look back at earlier in the or in the offseason, even in June and July, when we thought that Arizona and Utah, we thought TCU, we thought that stretch of games that Houston just finished was going to be a really challenging test. Houston actually fared fairly well across that. albeit an embarrassing loss to Kansas and Arizona in the present tense. If you'd have told me those are the two games that Houston lost across that back in July, I'd have been ecstatic. We thought that was going to be a really challenging gauntlet. Interestingly, now Baylor is the bowl eligible team Houston plays as they come out of that. And I hope that this continues to, drive. Merchandise sales are through the roof. They can't keep enough of the gear on deck in the store to sell it all. And I mean, it is really, really an impressive marketing campaign from that standpoint. I hope that translates to people showing up to the Houston Cougar Blue Out game with the attitude that we're going to show off and wear it. Houston's been wearing blue on the field, a slightly altered version of last year's uniform. You'll remember that last year, after wearing a uniform that was a lot like the Oiler uniform, there was a cease and desist letter sent from the Strunk family, Tennessee Titans, formerly Adams family. Not like the creepy old family, but kind of like the creepy old family. Anyway, cease and desist letter about wearing the Houston Oiler themed uniforms. Houston built up their case. This is back under AD Pesman, and they built up their case, thought they had a strong enough one, and were just going to make a few slight alterations. So they changed the stripe on the helmet. They went with numbers on the sleeve instead of stripes on the sleeve. And otherwise, it's the uniform, right? And so they're going to look. It's going to look great this weekend on the field. They're doing all kinds of fun stuff. First fans to the stadium. I think it's 20,000 fans. Get a blue towel. Let's make sure we get. Let's run out of blue towels. Let's get all the people we can all the time. As far as the impact on the game goes, there's a lot of hoopla around wearing blue this weekend. I'm into it. I'm not going to lie to you. I like uniforms. I'm into it, right? It's a fun aspect of the game. It's just interesting to see what a team wears every week, and finding ways to be both traditional and new is a fun thing, right? This is traditionally tied to the city, but also the U of H has it's all U of H logos on it, all those kind. It's a fun aspect, right? I hope that the hoopla around the blue uniforms translates to people in stands, right? This is not an exceedingly expensive game to get into still. There are still tickets available on both primary and secondary markets, right? This is not a game that you can't find a way to tailgate before. It's the last home game of the season, right? And I think that as you see people get closer to the weekend, this is a chance for you to get out and show the blue gear you just bought, because I know you did, and to go cheer the Cougs one more time in Willie Fritz's first year before hopefully cheering them on in a bowl game. Now, if you're going to travel to Provo, Utah, hats off to you. I've spent some time in Salt Lake. It's a great city to visit. DM me if you need a recommendation on where to get a good dirty soda. But otherwise, we're hoping that they win games to make this not the last game you go to this year, right? That's an important deal. Now, I want to stress that Willie Fritz and them deserve the support as well. It's been kind of a troublesome storm this year, and I think there are a lot of people that will all show up when they win, and And unfortunately, college football is not like that. You need to show up and support with the blue or red or whatever you want to wear, I guess, this weekend, and support anyway, right? This is not the NFL where they reward being bad by giving you the number one overall pick. Houston needs to win games. The home crowd advantage helps, and there's no advantage to tanking. Let's go help them win games, right? Anyway, that's my soapbox on this. But I think the blue is already making its way throughout all of the culture in and around Houston, and people are clearly excited about wearing the blue. I just want to make sure that we're excited about wearing the blue to the game as well. That all said, I've said it on yesterday's show, I have a wedding to go to this weekend. I'll bring down Locked On Cougs all week long, still figuring out what the post-game stuff will look like as well. But regardless, we'll be tuning in each and every day with bringing the latest on the Houston Cougars. So make sure you subscribe to the bell so you know we're live. Locked On Cougs, a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.